Oh, okay. Oh, man, this brings me joy. This brings me joy because you are about to be blessed by John Assaraf, a dear, dear friend. My brother, I feel so blessed to call you a soul brother. So,
And the feeling is mutual.
yeah, thank you, John. And John, you and I are doing very similar work in the world. But we have a backstory. It's really blessed. So many of you may know John Assaraf from the work he's done. He was featured in, if you've seen The Secret, he was featured in that movie, and he's considered a luminary in the world of manifestation. If you are at all looking to manifest something in your world, John is your person. So, and part of the, where we connect is also on the neuroscience, the foundation of neuroscience and evidence-based, that foundation. John has a business, Neurogym, where he does incredible work. And we'll come back to that. We'll shine a light on all of that later on, but I want to just start, John, in just sharing about our friendship and some of the extraordinary experiences that we've had together on this journey already. That actually relates to something I've alluded to earlier in, there's wherever that falls in the sequence, but it's the video with Scott Shannon, because I shared a story over there, but we'll get to that story. But wherever you want to start, John, wherever you want to begin, I honor you, and I trust in what'll ever emerge. I also want to mention that John is in Telluride on a ski trip right now, and he's got what is your battery power left over here? This is only the second time on your trip that you've left your charger. So if John times out and we lose, so ultimately this will be guided by the cosmic.
I'll have to call back on my mobile phone.
Okay.
I've got 50% battery left. I left my battery at home in Telluride. I think it was the universe's way of saying you're shutting down.
Right. Exactly. Okay.
I'm just listening.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure, Danny, who introduced us or how we got introduced to each other. We both reside in San Diego, and I heard you were very into personal development and leadership, conscious leadership and neuroscience. And somehow our paths crossed, and we started going on some walks together and talking together, and just developed a kindred friendship of common purpose, common passion, common health desires, and a sense of serving others and making a difference in the world as much as we can. And that led to, some just beautiful times together.
Yeah. Oh, well, I remember you run these brainathons, and
Right.
and you invited me on a number of them, and I remember we were with Larry King,
Yeah.
on one of
Right.
them. And we were being, it was like where I could say, I've been interviewed by Larry King. And, you're obviously working at that scale where you can actually, you've been featured on, I'm imagining Larry King, and I saw Ellen DeGeneres, and CNN, I imagine, anyway, you've got the idea. There is something about more than what I appreciate in the scale you're working at. Just the walks on the beach, I have a sense of your heart and spirit. That for me is the most precious part of it. And I'd love to, just because time is precious, I'd love to share with you, when was that? We went on a walk together one December. I think we were kind of going to December, and you were asking me what my highest wish for my intention for the following year. I'm trying to think, it was 2018. It might have been 2018. I think it was probably like 2018. And
it was a little bit before that, but I think 2017. 2017.
Beautiful. Okay, so 2017, and you asked me, Danny, what is your highest intention for this year? And I remember saying, You know, it was a very simple intention. It wasn't like anything, you know, my goal setting isn't, you know, X number of dollars, etc. My goal was simply, I just want to open my heart more. And then you said, I'd like to invite you into an experience. Would you be open to me inviting you into an experience? So can you pick up on that thread of that story?
Sure. I've always been extremely curious, and also there's a side of me that enjoys a little bit of risk, shall we say?
Yeah.
So many years ago, I started experimenting with you know, plant-based medicines, and they've had the most profound awakenings, heart openings, awareness opening of biblical proportions. And I invited you to a ceremony with a shaman that involved, you know, going deeper within the proverbial, you know, conscious onion. If we're on a layer of the onion and we can see a few layers up and we see a few layers down, I asked you if you want to go deep into the onion or deep out, right? Whichever way you want to look at. You were curious enough to go, yeah, I'm curious enough. And so we did a journey together in a controlled environment with a couple of shamans. And the specific journey was with psilocybin and ayahuasca vine combined. And you know, I invited my brother, I invited a couple of other friends, and we had one of the most magical moments ever. And what transpired within you.
Okay, before we go there, I want to just bring some additional context to this, because
Sure.
I've never ever done anything that actually, I've never had that kind of, so I went in, like I've never had a psychedelic experience. I mean, this is in the bucket of a psychedelic experience.
Sure.
And, but that same year, Scott Shannon presented, because I'm evidence-based, presented on his work in psychedelic psychotherapy.
Yep.
And he presented his data. And that same year, the Journal of Psychopharmacology dedicated the entire issue to this issue of psychedelic psychotherapy. And there was one study in particular, which was very impactful for me, where and I'm just thinking of the irony right now where I find myself in, it was with terminal cancer patients and who had anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
They were randomized to getting traditional antidepressive therapy, which didn't work, versus one dose of psilocybin.
Yep.
And it had a 60% response rate that endured for months or even years. And that one dose was rated by one of the top 5 experiences in people's lives.
Yeah.
And so that opened me to, not only did you make the invitation, but the context of where that fell with my personal goal with asking for a heart opening, and the data, and then Sue's blessing, my wife's blessing to go for it. That conspired to setting that evening up for actually priming me for this incredible experience. And yesterday I did a whole journey in Encinitas, and this journey happened in Encinitas in a temple in somebody's back garden. It was a sacred, it was like, I don't know how you got access to the sacred site, but it was like, I just wanted people to know that dose and setting is crucial on these journeys.
Yes.
And the ability to integrate the experience in a meaningful way is what set us up. So this was not just like, hey, I'm going into somebody's, garage and we're just dropping some drugs.
No.
Yeah, I just want them to understand this was set up. If you're considering doing something like this, make sure that you're whatever makes for safety, including all the legal and the everything, what makes for a safe experience, a journey through this, that something needs to be set up to make this happen in the sacred way that it unfolded. So John, I just wanted to provide that context.
I want to just share something that we can come back to later.
Yeah.
Um, about 7 years ago, like I'm not into doing drugs at all. I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke pot. I don't do drugs.
Yeah.
7 years ago, I was invited to do a journey with a shaman, again, in a controlled environment with something called DMT-5-MeO. Yeah. And I did the journey with my brother, again, who's also into exploring consciousness. It was in the top 2 experiences of my life. And when I was just coming out of the journey, the first thing that came to my mind was, when can I take my 2 sons to do this? And again, I'm anti-recreational drugs. Right. The first thing I thought about was, when can I take my sons to do this? Now, 7 years later, my sons and I, they were like 15 at the time and 13 and 15 at the time. 7 years later, I did the first controlled journey with both of my sons, who are in their 20s. About a year ago, I did a journey with one of my sons, similar to the one you and I did. And both of them were like, oh my God, because they've both tried drugs. I know that. And I said to them, I'm not going to do drugs with you, but I will do a spiritual journey, an awakening of your spirit and your heart, if you will follow the shaman and follow the preparation and follow what we're going to do to integrate. And we had one of the most unbelievable bonding experiences you can possibly imagine with my 2 sons, not just with them, and they're very, very close to begin with, but with me and them. And there was another individual in this experience that we just had, that something happened that came through me for him, that was just, oh my God. And my children were able to experience this opening and gift that this gentleman that was with me. We'll come back to that.
But I want to say that these high point experiences, and I certainly had a high point experiences that is actually informing my experience of awakening today, and we'll talk about that. But these high point experiences have a way of reintegrating into the work that we do on a daily basis, right? And I just want to kind of say that, that a lot of our work is divinely guided. I mean, ultimately, that's the source of the deep, whatever that deeper source of inspiration is, that's the ultimate place of purpose in our work. And when we get that, this understanding that our work is divinely guided, and we're touching the divine in a really the most unfiltered way imaginable, and coming back and then reintegrating that into our work, it's sacred work. It makes the work even more sacred.
Yeah, it's like, when we're dealing with, everyday discussions, consciousness, right? We see a certain percentage of the light spectrum. We hear a limited amount of the sound spectrum. We, our hearts open to a limited amount based on how much, pain or suffering or belief or limiting beliefs that we have, and our skills to navigate through our emotional world. And what's happened for me, and I can speak for me and then maybe experiences with you, is some of these medicines in the right environment just all of a sudden change your ability to see more from within, to feel more from within, to hear more from within, to understand layers and layers and layers of what's already there that you've never been able to experience. And so it's almost like having, a governor on your car, that the car might be able to go 200 miles an hour, but the governor stops it at 100 miles an hour. No matter how hard you press on the pedal, the car won't go faster. This is like taking a governor off of your brain and off of your emotional ability to understand and feel. And then if you have the ability to have the time and the wisdom to integrate what is reality, it changes your understanding of who and what you are. It changes your awareness of what we are and how we are so beautifully and intricately connected, it puts context into we are connected versus intellectualizing it.
So I want to just make it clear for everybody that there are many catalytic experiences in your life that can actually remove this governor as well. One is like psychedelics, but I just want to be very clear. It's not the only way of doing it.
Correct.
So there are other ways of doing it. And actually, interestingly enough, one of the ways of doing it is spiritual crisis. It's a spiritual crisis. And so for me, I had that experience, but I've had my brain cancer is another portal of entry.
Correct.
And so that portal of entry is actually removed my governor because I've had a spiritual awakening, and partly because I've also now have the ability to ask generative questions in my life more than I ever had before, because I've been through appreciative inquiry, and I've been through this exchange experience, the exchange approach, which you've seen, that allowed me at an inflection point of the deepest suffering, at my point of deepest suffering, you know, when I was in my hospital bed that night, where my brain was going, what if in every catastrophe that could happen, you know, why me, why now? But I found the question, what matters most now? And that was my drug. And I said, I came from that, make every moment count. And then the question was how, and it was live intensely loving relationships, which is kind of where we get to, and live the legacy of your work. So let me just jump in for just a moment.
You mentioned something, you know, a significant emotional experience that will shock you and either constrict you or expand you.
Yes.
Right. And it's this, you know, and you gave me a great term before, you know, appreciative inquiry, because of what is happening in your life right now. And because of your training and your awareness, you went to appreciative inquiry, right? That expands you, right? Versus constricts you. And
David Cooper Ryder expresses this beautifully. He says, questions create worlds. Questions create worlds. And so if you ask mindlessly, your brain is safety first. We know the brain is safety first. And you're going to go into a default set of questions to protect yourself from harm. That is like, what if in every catastrophe could happen? Why me? Why now? How do I protect myself at this moment in time? And those questions, while they're designed to save your life, they also happen to create a world of pain and suffering.
That's right.
But on the other hand, the question of, you know, the high altitude question of purpose, what matters most now? At that point, it creates a different world. It opens you into a world of flourishing abundance. And so that inflection point at your point of maximal pain literally is the same power that you can do from taking psilocybin, MDMA, you know, and so it's the same entry point. It just happens to be at that point of maximal pain. We're just simply asking a question that now is taking you into a different world.
Yeah.
And it's releasing the governor. So the governor actually is, in many ways, it's the natural default settings of our brain to protect ourselves. So we're safety first, and then there's love and belonging, and then there's flourishing, the capacity, higher circuits. But typically in pain, when we're in crisis, that governor that's looking to protect ourselves is predominant. And if you can find a way of finding a better question beyond the governor that's looking to protect yourself, to transcend, you can get access to this world that we're describing right now. So I wanted people to know that we entered this world because psilocybin, MDMA, you know, whatever the drugs are, they have a natural ability to remove the governor. But there are other ways of removing that governor as well that you can choose more intentionally, so you don't have to go through a drug-related, a plant-based experience to get into this world. There are other ways of entering.
Yeah, and look, I'm not here to advocate anybody using plant-based medicine. So it's a tool that you have available to you if you choose, you know, to use something that you mentioned.
Can I say, as it comes to the work that you're doing in the world, you you have entry points into the same world that are guided visualizations.
Yeah.
That this is your product line.
Yeah.
So to say, you have programs that you sell, that are transformational programs that you sell, that are designed specifically to enter you into this world, plant free.
That's correct.
But it's the same process. But what I'm sensing is you've had your plant-based experience and you've infused these methodologies with those insights to give people access to the same world of a flourishing abundance in the same area. Is that safe to say?
It's not only safe to say, Danny, what I have just discussed with you in the last 15 minutes is more than I've ever discussed what I've done with anybody on any platform, and never have I discussed it with my followers, ever.
Yeah. Okay.
So I use it for self-exploration, and I'm never shy about talking about it with personal friends one-on-one, people that I love, respect, and trust.
Oh, well, John, well, so this is like your coming out party.
It's like, yeah, I'm coming out of my shell.
So it's a deeper coming out. And let me just say, I trust that your followers who love you immensely will love you even more for this, because they understand the depth of commitment that you have to their transformation.
Yeah.
And they understand the depth of where your deepest desire, and I know this from just being, a loving brother with you, your deepest desire has nothing to do with financial success. Your deepest desire actually to serve is from your deepest connection to the divine, that you want to bring the divine into people's lives. And there's many ways, there's many ways of expressing what that means. And when I use the word divine, please, everybody pick your word. Okay. If your word is the divine, if your word is God, if your work is the deepest source of inspiration, because anytime I use any word, some people say that includes me and other people say it excludes me. So please choose whatever word, but it's us acknowledging that ultimately people think of us maybe as thought leaders. We're not thought leaders. We're giving it over to something far greater than ourselves, and we're in service of the wisdom. We're just channeling as best we can the wisdom of the universe out into the world in service of other, in service of your transformation.
Yeah, I have had, the reason I do the work that I do is I was very, very blessed when I was 19, when my life was an absolute mess. It was I was either going to die or go to the morgue. I was doing a lot of things with a little street gang in Montreal, Canada. And I had one mentor who just guided me along this path of personal development, understanding me better, to understand why I was doing what I was doing, why I was getting the results I was getting, what did I want to achieve. And he showed me a path to achieving what I want. I've had severe ulcerative colitis. I've been through 2 divorces now to be brilliantly happy with my 3rd marriage of 21 years with Maria. My children, a business. I've had things happen in my life. I abused alcohol for many, many years, and 11 years ago, I decided to stop drinking alcohol, and I invited this intelligence within me to guide me. And I haven't had a drink in 11 years from that decision, by tapping into this, you want to call it a spiritual power, an intelligent and omnipresent intelligence within you, which I believe is within everybody. I've had so many experiences that have shown me that I am more than just my, physical body and the 9 systems and my organs and my brain, and that I want people to release their limiting beliefs, their fears, their self-doubt, their uncertainty, their lack of confidence, their self-esteem, where they think I'm not good enough or I'm not worthy enough. And when they start to understand what they really are, billions of years of evolution, millions of years of humans evolving on planet Earth to create this sentient being called a human. Do you know what that gift really is? That's what I want to do.
So, John, you're doing this. Here's what I love about you. What you're doing is you're plugging people directly into that field. And you're saying, when you say, I believe everybody is connected to the field,
we are the field.
We are the field. So oftentimes when people look at you, they imagine that some people I think see you as a guru, and I want to help people understand that you're not a guru, and you have no intention to be a guru, because you're not asking to come through. You're not an intermediary in the access to this field. You're inviting people in your programs into direct access of the field. Your programs are saying, you are your guru. You are your guru. And you have direct access. So neither of us are asking anybody to come worship at our temple. I don't think either of us, are interested in that in the least.
Nope.
The greatest joy is wanting to invite everybody into their unique experience of the divine, of however you experience it, and to bring that forth in the world. Because ultimately, the more people that do that channel that, I perceive this field of loving consciousness. It's a mysterious field, and it's loving consciousness. Einstein, you like to quote Einstein. He says the biggest question we can ask ourselves is, are we living in a fundamentally friendly or hostile universe? And that will restructure everything. I believe the base of the universe is friendly, and it's collective loving consciousness.
Yeah, something to consider, something that I teach, is that your perception is your projection.
Yes.
Right? And so the question is, how did I start to perceive what I perceive, and why is it that I perceive, whether it's the lack and limitations or the scarcity or the abundance that is already here? And when we take now into consideration the work that you and I are very, very passionate about, the neuroscience of this, and we to think about our brain becoming conditioned, and once it's conditioned, there's an automatic processes that happens that just causes these blinders to be on. What if there's a way to remove some of those blinders? So instead of having a limited belief, you discover an empowering one. What if having, a fear, you have more courage? What if you can open up your world of probability to achieve what you want, instead of it being a remote possibility? We have, I often say we have, this organism called a brain. I don't consider it an organ. I consider it an organism that evolves and changes and is dynamic. And we have the ability to deliberately and consciously evolve ourselves.
Yeah. So right. I call that, John, my program, I call that awakening conscious leadership. We're doing the same work. How would you encapsulate, your programs? It's the same thing, but your unique voice. How do you encapsulate the lexicon of what your work is? I know it's Neurogen, but within that, how would you encapsulate the programs you're running to actually capture that essence that you're describing right now?
Well, the essence of everything that I do is based around awareness gives you choice, and choice is what gives you freedom.
There we go.
That's the essence is, if I can help you become aware of your self-talk, and then you're able to change it, your world changes. If I'm able to help you become aware of the fears that are holding you back, and you could develop the skills to manage your emotions called fear, or your emotion called fear, then your world is opened up. If I can help you become more aware that your self-image or self-worth or self-esteem is holding you back, and that from the spiritual perspective, you are boundless and unlimited versus limited, then that gives you the opportunity to have greater choice. So, and here's something you remember. I remember a walk that you and I had.
John, I have to give you like I don't know if you can see my emoticons pop up on the screen, but I'm giving you a celebration. I'm giving you
when you were talking earlier, about your cancer, it's like made certain things real for you. As I'm sitting here in Telluride, Colorado, and, my brother and I are skiing for his 68th birthday, it's kind of like we're healthy now. We think everything's going great. And we think that we have time in front of us. And so time to us, we know that there's a limited amount of time, but like dying today or tomorrow, it doesn't become a reality, right? What you've just experienced is all of a sudden you have cancer. And now all of a sudden time has changed. This illusion of time has changed. And if I may introduce something that I wasn't aware of, that my brother who had met you before said, you lost your mother to cancer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I said, are you fucking kidding me?
Yes.
I didn't know this. And I go, oh my God, the fear, that you must have experienced.
Well, I have to tell you the story. I mean, there's a story of losing my mom to cancer, because I actually diagnosed my mom with a cancer. I was an internist. She was the picture of thriving health. I not only did I give her diagnosis, I cared for her on her cancer journey, and transformational for her. So her physicians were going on vacation, and I had to take over her workup. And her diagnosis was, the radiologist called me and said, I'm sorry to have to tell you, your mother has pancreatic cancer and it's spread to her liver. The next phone call I had to make, I was still living in the Bay Area. She was living in San Diego. And that's why I came down here to San Diego ultimately. The next phone call I had to make was, I had to call and give my mom her diagnosis. And I said, Mom, I'm so sorry to have to tell you, you've got pancreatic cancer and it's spread. And I know as an internist, my mom had 4 months to live. She lived 13 months, and I'll tell you why she lived 13 months. And so it was just a shock. She was, oh my God, that's a silent killer, isn't it? She knew she was going to die. Both of us grieved. And I said, Mom, I'm going to get on the next plane down, and I'm going to come down to be with you. And I walked into the house, and I walked in, and I held my mom in my arms. And I said, Mom, I'm going to promise you, this is going to be the richest year of your life. Wow. Richest year of your life. I said, I promise you, it's going to be the richest year of your life. And it was. And here's Mom's transformation. Up until that point, what you're describing in insecurities, Mom's limiting beliefs, she was actually a extremely insecure woman. She had very traumatic experiences growing up. And so she traded on her beauty and demanded that we actually pay full validation and acknowledgement to how good she looked or how good her cooking was. And if she didn't, she would rail and get really upset. My mom was, up until that point in her life, somebody could suck the energy out of the room. She was very demanding. The moment she was diagnosed with her cancer, she transformed. Because any of you watching, I want you to think about this. And this is the blessing. This is the blessing of cancer transformation. If you knew you only had 4 months to live, where would self-doubt rank on your list of priorities around how you're going to architect your life? You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
That diagnosis of time puts self-doubt into its appropriate perspective, and it vaporizes. Because what becomes manifest is time is short, and all I want to do as a condemned person is I want to drink every moment up in my relationships, savoring my relationships. All we want to do is want to savor our relationships in a cycle of, ultimately, it's a cycle of receiving and giving love. And I learned this from my mom, from the story, because she started, that moment she got a diagnosis, and I said, I want you to live I'm going to promise you it's going to be the richest life. I didn't have to tell her anything else. She knew what that meant. She knew she was going on a trip, and she wanted to drink up her relationships as intensely as she could before she left. So she shifted from, consuming attention, getting validation, to radiating love. My mom became the most loving person she lived 13 months on the physiology of radiation of love. That's why she lived she shifted in terms of anxiety into love, and that gave her an extra 9 months of life. It gave her an extra 9. And so when she finally got to month 13th, when the chemo was, essentially her platelets bottomed out, we couldn't give the chemo anymore, and it exploded back, the cancer. She was in hospice, and we were by the bedside at a vigil. And it was coming to the end. And the rabbi came by 2 days beforehand, before she died. The rabbi came by. He, interestingly, had lymphoma himself. So he was on precious time as well. And I was with my sister at the bedside, and I didn't think Mom, we were just on a vigil, I didn't think Mom could hear anything we were saying. I thought she had left us already. And the rabbi comes in and sits down at my mom's ear level and starts whispering, having a conversation in my mom's ear. And then he leans in and he asks the generative question that I asked that same night. He asked this question: Yvonne, after all these years, what have you learned is the meaning of your life? He asked the same question, what matters most now? That was a version of purpose, the generative question. And I didn't think Mom was going to be able to open her eyes or hear him. I didn't think she was. Miraculously, she opened her eyes. She opened her eyes, and her answer was to give love, to give love, to give love. Those were her dying words. Those were literally her dying words. And so after she passed on, I had a discussion with a wise friend, of mine. I said, my mom moved in a very profound way from a place of to get love to a place of to give love. And then my wise friend said, but what if your mom had learned how to receive love in her lifetime? And that was when I understood that the cycle of healthy relationships, the cycle of creative relationship, is a cycle of receiving and giving love with others. So much of us is blocking the receipt because we don't feel worthy of receiving love, and we diminish that. But if you open yourself wholeheartedly to receiving love, it puts you into a cycle of giving love.
That's right.
And it's a virtuous cycle. And so that is the deepest part of my work. So when I'm thinking about my transformation, and even that experience where I had that night,
which I'm sure everybody's wondering, tell us about the experience.
Well, I'll tell you about it in simple.
Yeah.
In simple. That experience I had was an experience of receiving and giving love, unlike I've ever given. My ego was completely set aside, because sometimes what happens is even like this, when people gather in corners, and there's always this feeling like, I'm not in that conversation. I'm not in that conversation. And there's an envy of that, even if it's very subtle. It's like all these amazing conversations are going on, but I'm not in that one. I had the experience that even if I wasn't in a conversation, I was in the cosmic conversation, celebrating the joy of the conversations being had in the room. And then when people would come to me and they would share something with me, I was wide open in receiving, and I reflected back with enthusiasm. Oh my God, this is the most incredible thing I'm saying. And what happened as I did that, people started gravitating in my direction because they wanted to taste what that glory of that bliss was. And I was just reflecting. I was in a cycle of complete receiving and giving love, undiluted.
Oh yeah, it was for the few of us that were in the room. What we experienced with you when this ego was set aside and whatever else needed to be set aside, you were cosmic laughter, enthusiasm, happiness, love, unbound in the most spiritual forms of look at what's possible and what's coming, like an explosion of happiness and love and giggliness. And it was, and you just kept saying, this is unbelievable. This is incredible. This is the most unbelievable thing ever. And you were laughing and sharing. And that was, you know, in my world, you know, we think about, you know, the technological times we live in, right? That was the killer app.
Yeah,
You know?
that was. I remember that moment because I remember there was a
Oh,
moment where we actually embraced, and
yeah,
we embraced heart to heart. And that was just, it was like a melding of my heart and your heart, that, you know, has kind of cemented a bond between us. You know, even though we haven't spoken in just recent months, it, like we're speaking now, it's like no time has passed.
yeah,
It's literally given us, this is infinite time. And now the same experience I'm having. I had a template for what's possible. And by the way, I never had to go back to doing psilocybin again. I had no craving. That was one unique experience because it gave me a window to the world.
right.
You know,
A
and so
possibility.
yeah, a template to world, and without any need to go back there again. And you know, if I have a psilocybin experience, it's not because I'm craving it again.
Yeah.
There'll be another context, but I have no craving. It's like a complete experience. It's like I had a crystallization of a knowing that
Right.
now that I'm having this experience now of this kind of, I'm experiencing the same bliss I experienced then. I'm experiencing this bliss now with you in this relationship. I mean, it's not as, you know, it doesn't have that, there's a certain high that is, I have to say, certain it's actually a more integrated experience, but it's the same quality of experience that, John, we're in a cycle of receiving and giving love with each other intensely right now. And then I'm mindful that I'm mindful that we're not only alone, there are thousands of people watching. And John and I are in a cycle of receiving and giving love with you. The same thing, because we're mindful. It's just a very powerful experience. I'm mindful of how much power do you have left on your computer?
37%. I just checked.
It's like a Hanukkah. It's like Hanukkah, right?
The light that keeps on shining.
John, you know, I sense that this is actually just in terms of, we've been speaking now for about, you know, I would like to actually respect people's time because we can come back and have more conversations. So I think this is we've covered such rich, you know, I mean, I don't even know, there's such a rich spiritual unfolding in this emergence in this conversation. And I just want to invite, I know what I'm going to say, which is just going to express my love for you in my close. But I just, whatever you feel moved to actually share in our closing, which is only part of the journey to a new opening. Sure.
It's funny, as we were talking, I wanted to invite people just to consider this, and it's what I know as fact for me and for many of my students is that I am way, 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 way more than I think I am. I am way, way, way more capable to feel more than I do. I am way, 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 way more to give and receive love. And I want people to just open up to the possibility that you can turn whatever limiting beliefs you have into powerful beliefs. You can turn any fear you have into your fuel for success. You can discover how to release your limiting idea of who you are and a self-image that may be limiting you into one that allows you to expand beyond your wildest dreams. And I also want to make sure I say is you don't need the medicines to do that. If you choose to one day go down that path, great. It's just a tool, I call it an accelerant, right? It accelerates the ability to do that. Meditation is a great place to start. Mindfulness is a great place to start. Asking yourself better questions is a great place to start. Talking to yourself in a positive, constructive way is a great place to start. Visualization is a great place to start. So there are many, many, many tools to begin your journey of really discovering that whatever it is that created every one of us and everything that you are able to see in on planet Earth and maybe the universe, whatever that is that created us. I don't care what the name is that you give it. That thing is you. That is within you to discover. And that is going to be your greatest source of power.
Okay, well, and now I want to invite you into, I've got a very specific story that I want to invite you into sharing, because it's a story of purpose. When you say we need to start, the first step is to anchor to your purpose for starting, right? It's to anchor to your purpose for starting. So there's all this possibility. So there is a story that you tell that I often tell in the story of purpose. It's the story that I often credit you, and oftentimes I will use John Assaraf, but sometimes I say John. I'm not sure if people know who John is in San Diego. And what that is, it's a story of starting and making a commitment to start. And the story is understanding the difference between interest and commitment. Right? That was gifted to you early on by your mentor. Can you share that story? Because I think that's actually going to be a really good place to wrap, to actually kind of motivate people into taking action right now in wherever they're at, into engaging in whatever you've suggested. But it actually is going to require some aspect of motivation and commitment to doing so for yourself.
So my brother, who I'm with right now, literally 40 years later, because this story happened 40 years ago. I was, as I mentioned earlier, getting into a lot of trouble, causing a lot of pain and shame and suffering for my family and myself. And my brother had shared with me that one of his clients, he's a tennis professional, is a very successful entrepreneur, philanthropist, husband, father, just a really good gentleman. He said, why don't you take the train from Montreal, where I was living, to Toronto, and come and meet me for the weekend and have lunch with this guy. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll come, and my brother actually had to pay for my trip, because I didn't have the money to pay for a train ride, which was probably like $8. Long story short, we sit at lunch with this man, Mr. Alan Brown. And he asked me a whole bunch of questions about, what I want to achieve. And I said, well, I'd love to get a car. I'd like to move out of my parents' home. I would like to have a little bit of money in my pocket so I can go out and have some fun and, not do illegal things. And next, he said, that's all great. So, but what are some of your bigger goals and dreams? And I said, well, I really don't have any bigger goals and dreams. And he handed me this document, and it was the 1980 goal setting guide. And he gives me this document that had about 5 or 6 pages on it with a bunch of questions on these pages. And the first question was, and I'm 19 at the time. First question was, at what age do you want to retire? I look at him and I go, Mr. Brown, I'm 19. What do you mean, at what age do I want to retire? I want to get a job. Second question, what net worth do you want? I look at him again. I go, Mr. Brown, what does net worth mean? Right. Third question, what kind of lifestyle do you want? What kind of charitable contributions do you want to have? What kind of car do you want? What kind of home do you want? What kind of work do you want to do? It had all of these questions that I had no idea the answers to them. It was just like freaking make believe. So I just wrote shit out. Mm-hmm. I want to retire at the age 45. I want to have a net worth of $3 million. I want to drive a Mercedes. I want to have a 4-bedroom house. I want to retire my parents. I want to travel the world first class. All of this stuff. And then, there wasn't anything about, spiritual development at that time. It was more goals that were materialistic and emotionally based. So I wrote out all this stuff. I gave it to Mr. Brown, and he reads it and he looks, and he said, this is actually pretty good stuff. Where did you get all of these ideas? And I said, well, I used to watch the show Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous with Robin Leach. And I just like the lifestyle that those people on TV are living. And so he goes, well, first and foremost, way to be, willing to put it on paper. And he said, I'm going to ask you one question. And the answer to this question will determine whether you achieve every one of these things. In the back of my mind, I'm saying, yeah, sure. One question is going to determine, am I going to achieve all of this stuff? Yeah, okay. So he asked me, he leans in, he goes, John, are you interested in achieving these things, or are you committed? I'm like, what? Am I interested? Am I committed? So I asked him, I said, Mr. Brown, what's the difference? And he says, John, if you're interested, you'll do what's easy and what's convenient. If you're interested, you will keep telling yourself the stories and reasons and excuses you have that you left high school at grade 11, you failed English, you failed math, your dad's a cab driver, mother's a seamstress, you didn't have the education, you don't have the family. He says, you'll keep reinforcing your current sense of reality and the identity that goes along with that. He says, but if you're committed, you'll upgrade your knowledge, you'll upgrade your beliefs, you'll upgrade your habits, and you will become the person capable of achieving every one of those goals, because every one of those goals is achievable right now.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking, interest, commitment, interest. So I yelled with a little bit of excitement, I said, well, in that case, I'm committed.
Right.
And he reached his hand out to me, says, in that case, I will be your mentor. I go, wow, that's great. What's a mentor? That's how ignorant I was, right? And he goes, a mentor is somebody that will guide you, will open up your awareness, will show you how to overcome your limiting beliefs, your fears, your lack of confidence, lack of certainty. Mentor will show you what to do and what not to do, what to learn, what to listen to, and what to watch. A mentor will be your guide, so that you save time, energy, and attention will be spent on how you can because you must. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of me opening up my world of possibility. And the rest, as they say, is history. I started on a path of self-discovery.
And now you're paying it forward. Now you're actually, you're offering, you have individual and group coaching, and you're doing this for others, you're mentoring others. So the way I actually integrate that story in what I do is the simplification of that. Because I give one line. I said the difference between interest and commitment is if you're interested, you'll do what's convenient.
That's right.
If you're committed, you'll do whatever it takes.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And then I say, if you will do whatever you'll be committed when you connect your commitment with your deepest sense of purpose. Because it's only when you connect your commitment to your deepest sense of purpose, you'll know that you cannot not show up.
That's right.
You're going to have to commit to that. And so
I say your why has to be bigger than any story, reason, excuse, belief, try. Your why has to be bigger, because if your why isn't bigger than your stories, reasons, excuses, and traumas, they will win.
So I hope that everybody listening, and I imagine you will share this with some of your community.
You better believe it.
Yeah,
this is my coming out party.
Your coming out party. So what I hope how I hope John and I have inspired you is that if you can begin to crystallize down into just a very simple thing, of everything we've spoken about, what matters most to you in your life right now? Whatever suffering you may be experiencing, as you lean into that, ask yourself, what is it that I'm here to learn? And how can I make meaning of this suffering? In a way, we're claiming transformation so you can give it away. So how do I transform myself in a way that I'll have something immeasurable, of incredible value, like really passing it on and finding your purpose in that. And then galvanizing, once you come to a clarity that you've clarified your sense of purpose, then actually asking yourself, what are the skills and tools I need to curate to be by skillful means in service? And you speak about, John, you've spoken about skill set and action set. So, what are the skills you want to specifically accumulate to develop, to be able to deliver the meaningful actions in your life that can create transformation for yourself and by extension, others. And that connecting with purpose will galvanize you into a sense of, I will do whatever it takes. And that's not going to be externally imposed. It'll be internally driven. And so John and I know we wish this for you at this moment in time. And I hope this conversation has served you all well. My brother, I love you. I love you. I love you.
I love you too, my brother. My heart, my energy, my prayers, my love, anything that I have that will serve you, the answer is yes.
Okay. So I'm going to pause the recording. So we'll have a private moment, goodbye. And in the meantime, I'm wishing each of you listening, John, I believe we both want to wish you a blessed day and really a thriving life.
Absolutely.